It's on.
Got it.
There it is.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about animated GIFs tonight, creating them with Photoshop, and they're actually pretty easy to do. It's not going to be that long of a presentation, but we'll go into some stuff, and I'll go into some examples and how to do it. But animated GIFs have been around for a long, long time, and they're actually GIFs, John, not GIFs.
Yeah, that helps. No, okay.
And there's a story. There's actually a story behind that, which I'll tell you when I get to it. Okay, we'll go past my stuff, Mike. And by the way, this presentation I will put in the chat window now. If I can find the chat window. Okay, I'll put a link into this presentation so you can download the PDF. The PDF, of course, won't be animated, but it will be in the presentation here. Okay, so the GIF format is pronounced GIF like the peanut butter, and it's actually on purpose. It was named after the peanut butter, but they didn't want to use the same letters, so they named it. They didn't want to do GIF, so they did it GIF, sort of the Italian pronunciation. So the GIF format was actually created in 1987. It's the oldest format that's still around. It's been around for, over 35 years now, almost 35 years in another few weeks. And it's pretty amazing that anything on the internet is around for 35 years, but the GIF format has persisted. It stands for Graphical Interchange Format. It was developed at CompuServe, and some of you are old enough to remember CompuServe. It was the first, I won't call it a social media company, but it was sort of that way. Almost nothing else on the internet has survived this long. Basically, GIF files can contain 16 to 256 color near photographic images. And we say near photographic because 256 colors is nowhere near what we have come to expect in photographs, digital photographs. Many digital photographs, 14-bit digital images have something like 16 billion colors, some ridiculous number. So 256 colors aren't really photographic quality, so we call them near photographic quality. And for the most part, they look pretty decent. If you look at them small, it's not something you'd want to print into a 16 by 20 or 20 by 24. But one of the unique things about the GIF format is that it not only supports static images, but also supports animated images. It was the first format to do that, and there's only been one other format since that actually supports animated images. That's the PNG format. So the PNG format, or the APNG format, the animated PNG, supports animation, but it isn't as popular as the GIFs. So GIFs, coming from 1987, and PNGs are probably about 10 years old, maybe a little, not much more. This 1987 format is still outperforming and it's far more popular than the newer PNG formats. Probably the first animated GIF that any of us has seen, and some of us, if we're old enough, we remember this one. We probably saw it on a lot of websites because when the internet was new, there wasn't a lot of web content, and people were developing content, and everybody would put in under construction notice on their pages when they hadn't been developed yet. And this was the most popular of all the animated GIFs. And this animated GIF is actually over 30 years old. It's actually still used in some cases, or at least a new version of it. So what animated GIFs are stop motion images. So if we kind of think of a stop motion image, we can kind of think of flip cards. So if you had flip cards and you wanted to create a drawing on each card, and each card was a little bit different than the previous one, and then you flipped it in your thumbs, in your hand, you would get an animation. And it was a crude animation, and it was probably one that many of us had tried to do or have seen done in the past. Well, here's one, an example. Well, here's some examples of the animated GIFs that are popular on the internet today. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, thousands of them probably. And memes have become very popular as animated GIFs. So animated GIFs show motion. They're kind of like a cartoon flip book. And this kind of demonstrates whoops, let's go back there again. Come on. There we go. Actually have to start this up. Well, it's not wanting to start. Cannot play media. Well, I'm not sure why this is. If this isn't playing, then we're going to have trouble with a lot of other stuff. Let me see if I can find another version of this.
This is looking a little more like my computer experience.
Well, this is an issue with Zoom, I believe, because I mean I just went through this and it was working. So let me just take a look here. Yeah, I'm going to have trouble finding this. I can see that here. Let me unshare my screen and let me see if I can do something with.
While Bert's doing that, how many people in their youth tried to draw these things with, with crayons and do your own little flip books and stuff like that? I remember doing it when I was a little kid. Anybody else play with that?
You were clearly a very advanced little kid.
or a very bored little kid. I don't know.
That frequently goes hand in hand.
I can remember doing it with stick figures because they were easy to draw.
Yeah. I wasn't much more advanced than that, but it was just sort of amazing to be able to do that. I guess I saw a commercial one someplace. I don't know where, but yeah, it was sort of fun.
Okay, let's try this. I'm going to have to turn off PowerPoint here and restart it. I made a change in the Zoom settings, so hopefully that's going to do it. Nope, not going to. Well, hopefully you'll be able to see the rest of it. What this was showing was a actual flip book. Somebody created flip cards and was going through flip cards. So I think you all understand what it is. So that was the point of the slide anyway. So hopefully the rest of the animation will work. But basically, most of the stuff on the internet that has animated GIFs are images that are either cartoonish or sometimes they add text to it and they make it look like somebody's talking. And memes have become a very common use of animated GIFs. But what we're going to talk about tonight is using photographs for animated GIFs. And you can use your photographs in animated GIFs and create some interesting results. So if you're going to do it with photographs, continuous shooting mode is what you want to do. Basically, you want to shoot a continuous stream of images of some action, of something happening. And, very often the idea behind continuous shooting is that you take a whole bunch of images and you decide which one you like best, in post-processing. When you look at it on a computer, you decide you like one image better than the others. But in this case, we can take these continuous streams and we can actually create animated GIFs. And that's what we're going to be working with tonight. So to create an animated GIF in Photoshop, you just need to create multiple images, a sequence of images, a sequence of some action. And each one is going to get placed on a different layer. So the images can then be animated to create the flipbook effect. So if we take a sequence like this of a geyser, I took in Iceland, and we have a variety of images on a sequence of action, we can then take the sequence and we can animate it into a animated GIF. Now, the actual sequence I'm going to show you, if it works, and I sure hope it works, is more than 6 images, but I'm just showing you 6 of the images in the sequence. It works. So there's a sequence, an animated GIF of a geyser in Iceland. And when I took this, my goal was not to create an animated GIF. I just wanted to take the whole sequence. And I was going to decide which image I liked best. The camera was on a tripod, so they're all aligned pretty well. If you look on the bottom left, you see a person, and you can see them actually moving backwards as the geyser goes forward, goes higher rather. And there is other motion in this image, but it's kind of hard to see unless you're looking for it. But the geyser is obviously the main interest. And we can create an image like this, which almost looks like a video, and we can make it actually look more video-like if we want. But I actually made this one look kind of jerky on purpose, so you could see each sequence of the eruption. And I think I made each image last probably about 0.2 of a second. Or maybe a little, maybe half a second, I'm not sure. So, first of all, you need to understand layers in Photoshop. I wasn't sure, I thought this was a library series and this would have people who were not familiar with Photoshop or edited post-processing, but it looks like we have all Simsbury Camera Club members here. But basically you have to understand layers, and layers really are pretty simple if you don't understand them. I'm going to give you a real short tutorial on layers before we create our first animated GIF. And if you want to learn more about it, I'm actually teaching a workshop on May 14th. Okay, so layers. Well, first of all, let me ask a question. Does anybody, I don't remember everybody here, how familiar are people with layers? Is anybody not familiar with layers?
I am not.
Okay. Okay, so let's go through what layers are. In Photoshop, you can think of layers as sheets of glass, transparent sheets of glass. They're layered on top of one another, and we can place something on each sheet of glass. And if we look down on this stack of glass sheets and images, we can see the result, whatever the result is of the stack. The stack has a sequence. So as we see in this little example here, let me see if I can get my laser pointer here. Okay, there we go. So you can see this top layer is on top of this next layer, which is on top of the next layer, which is on top of the bottom layer. And if this layer is completely covered with an opaque image, then you can't see the bottom layer, because basically what you're doing is you're looking down on it. Let's do this instead. So actually what you're doing is you're looking down on the layer through each layer of glass. So you'd end up seeing this image here, which would cover up maybe part of this over here, but you see part of this image on this side of it, and then in any open areas you'd see this image, and you'd get the resulting view of all those images. So you're looking down through a stack of glass, basically. Each layer can be fully or partially cover the layer below it. Layers can be partially transparent. So you can have 50% transparency on a layer. So you can kind of see through it. So each layer has an opacity setting, which can be set between 0, which is fully transparent. In other words, you can't see anything on it, to 100%, which is fully opaque. So in this example, we have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. We have, this is what the layers panel in Photoshop would look like. We have a background layer, which is this guy here, and that is the blue layer. And you can see when you look at this, you see blue only in the areas that are not covered by the other objects. That's the bottommost layer. The topmost layer is this ellipse. And this brown ellipse, you notice, is 60% opaque. So we can actually see partially through it. So we can actually look down on the blue layer, the green layer, and the red layer. And this can actually, we can see through the brown layer, but it impacts it because it's 40, if it's 60% opaque, it means it's 40% transparent. And at the very bottom, we have our background, which is the blue layer, the light blue, and that covers the entire frame that's not covered by other objects. And you notice that every layer is 100% opaque except for the brown layer, the brown circle. So again, think of each of these layers as a sheet of glass. The top sheet of glass has a brown circle on it, which is semi-transparent. The next layer has a navy blue rectangle. The next layer has a green rectangle, and the next one has a red rectangle. And if we look, we basically are looking down through these sheets of glass to see what this final image looks like on the left. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Whoever
Yes.
didn't.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
That's a great example, Bert. I really like that one.
No, thank you. The eyeball, there's an eyeball next to each one of these, basically indicates visibility. And if you turn the eyeball off, the layer goes away. So again, the red layer is showing. If we turn off the visibility on the red layer, the red square goes away, and we see the full stack of layers, but the red layer is not showing. We still have it, and we could turn it back on. But if we turn it off, it becomes invisible. And this is an important concept to understand when it comes to creating animated GIFs. We'll be using the eyeball a lot. If we create the bottom layer as being transparent, we can actually see through it. And it's a little confusing because what we're seeing through is my PowerPoint slide, which is has some color in it, that amber color. But it's basically, we could create the bottom layer as being transparent. So in this case, we have some text, and we see it's on the rectangle 2, which is transparent. And we have some text in that rectangle. And then we throw a red rectangle there. And we throw a 60% opacity ellipse underneath the red rectangle. Again, the stacking order is important here. Whoops, So basically that's what we have. We have layers. We can create opacity or transparency in layers. We can create a different order of the layers. So one layer can be on top of another, or we can move them around. So that's kind of what the bottom line is on layers. So let me give you an example of creating layers in Photoshop. This will be a real simple example. I'm not sure why I have, there we go. Okay, so in Photoshop, I am going to create, we'll do this with objects rather than images because it's a little simpler. And we'll create a red rectangle. And you can see the red rectangle is in front of something called background. And what I'm going to do in background is I'm going to make background a solid color. So we're going to fill it with a color. And, well, yellow is good as any. And there we go. That's kind of a tough yellow to look at, though. Let's create another object. In this case, I will create an ellipse. And we will fill it with, do this with green. Okay. So you can see that we have the green layer underneath the red layer, the red rectangle. But if I move this green layer, green circle, green oval, above the red rectangle, now it's on top of it. Okay, if I change the opacity of the green rectangle to something less than 100%, then we can see through it. I'll put the opacity back to 100. And so that's the main idea behind layers. If I turn off these two layers, I only have one layer, the green oval. If I turn off the green oval, I can't see anything. If I turn on the red one, I see the red one, the green one, the yellow one. So hopefully you have an understanding of what layers are in general. Not too much detail here, but if you have any questions, let me know. Ask them now. Okay. Okay, so when we create animated GIFs in Photoshop, we use multiple layers. We could use between 2 and 100 or 200 layers, 500 layers. It's unlimited how many we could use. Very often we don't use more than 10 or 15. But with animations, we tend to use more layers because if we want the animation to last more than a second or two, we're going to need multiple images. So each layer is going to contain a different image. So if we're shooting a sequence in continuous shooting mode, let's say we're taking a picture of that geyser and you basically put your camera in continuous shooting mode. And maybe you're shooting 5 or 10 frames per second. Depends how, what you want to do. For a geyser, I'd probably shoot something like 3 or 4 frames a second, maybe, or maybe 5. I don't know. Depends on your camera as well. But most cameras have a high and low continuous shooting mode, and you can decide how many frames you want to shoot. And usually the low mode is configurable. But assume you took a whole bunch of pictures of that geyser, and maybe a dozen pictures, and you're then going to put each of those images on a separate layer in Photoshop. So basically, there's a geyser. It's actually a different geyser. And you can see 7 images, and you can see each image is different. And you notice that only one of the images, the very bottom, has the eyeball on. And at that point, only that image would be visible. As we go through the sequence, we're going to be turning on each individual image one at a time to get a sequence, to get our sequence animated. So this is the timeline. What we're looking at the bottom here is the timeline in Photoshop. And the timeline allows us to create videos or animated frame animations, as they call it, or we'll call it animated GIFs. They allow us to create animated GIFs, and they allow us to do a number of different things. So basically, you go to the window menu in Photoshop and choose timeline. It typically is not visible by default. So if you want to create a timeline, you have to actually come into the window menu and turn on timeline. And when you do, this is what you'll see. This will be at the bottom of the screen. It's a little workspace for creating your animations. And you notice that this right here is actually a drop down. See that little inverted V? That basically tells you that there's more options there. And there are two options there. One is create frame animation, and one is to create a timeline. But we're only going to deal with creating frame animations here. So you're basically going to select, if frame animation isn't already selected, you're going to drop that drop down and select create frame animation. Now, this is sort of the anatomy of the timeline window. We see here, each of these are the frames in our sequence. So here's a geyser, and we see the different sequence of what each image. Right here, what we have is the amount of time that each of these frames is going to be displayed. So in each case, each of these frames is, well, all but one of them. The last one is different, but all but the last one are 0.2 of a second. This is in seconds, and the last one is 2 full seconds. So basically the way I created this one is that each image is going to be displayed for 0.2 of a second, and it's going to sequence to the last frame, which will show for a full 2 seconds. And you can change that to pretty much anything you want. I don't know if there are any limits in this. Down here you have the number of loops. And the number of loops you can do forever, meaning the animation is going to continue through, and when it's done, it starts over again. And it just keeps going forever. You can actually choose to have the animation, the number of loops 1, 2, 3. You can choose the number. So you can have it display 4 times and stop. Or you can just have it go forever. Most animated GIFs are set to go forever. But you could change that. To view while you're in Photoshop, you have the play, next frame, previous frame, go to first. There's no go to last, I guess. But you have these controls, which look like regular, what we used to call VCR controls. Then we have this thing called the tween. This is called tween. I'll explain tween later. If we want to manually add a frame, we have this add button. We click that and we can add a frame at the end. And if we select a frame and click the trash can, of course, it deletes that frame. So pretty simple. If you want, this guy right here converts a frame animation to a video timeline, which again, we're not going to cover. But this is the anatomy of this timeline window. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to see it's pretty easy to use.
Bert, I need to ask you a question that will probably show my ignorance about some of these things, but you're talking about using images that are shot in continuous mode. And I understand that that's very different than when you're shooting with your camera in video mode, which is straight, continuous, no breaks whatsoever. can you do something by using something that you've shot in video mode? Or do you need to have been shooting in continuous mode the way you've explained?
Well, when you shoot video, you're shooting anywhere from typically 20 to 30 frames per second. Okay. Here we may be shooting 5 frames per second. So it's going to, 5 frames per second is a lot jerkier than 30 frames per second, which is standard movie. In some cameras now we're doing 60 frames per second. You could, I guess, extract images from the video and create an animated GIF, but since a video is already animated, I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. Unless you want, and if you wanted more of a jerky display, I guess there's things you could do with video editing to a video. I'm not sure you'd want to do this with a video. I'm not sure it would make sense.
I guess what I was thinking of, if I only wanted to send a snatch of a video to somebody, is making it into a GIF an easier way to do it than any other way, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, videos take up huge amounts of space. If you shoot a video, you could get up to 100 megabyte, a gigabyte, 2 gigabytes very quickly. Animated GIFs, they're not going to be that big. These are much easier to transport via email and other means. So.
Got you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so to shoot an animation, you want to set your camera on continuous shooting. Depending on how fast the motion is, you may want to select a high or a low shooting speed. Depends on your camera. Most cameras have a high and a low shooting speed, continuous shooting speed, and very often the low continuous shooting speed is configurable. So if the high is, let's say 8 frames per second, the low may be 4 frames per second, but the low can be configured anywhere from 2 to 6. So you have a choice. Typically, I don't change the default on my camera. I'll either shoot at high or low depending on what the action is. If the action is very fast, I may want to leave it on high. I want to get as many frames as I can. But if the action isn't really, really fast, I will shoot on low continuous shooting speed. It's best if you use a tripod, but you don't have to. I'm going to show you examples of where I've used tripods, and the tripod does make it very nice because you have the background being, completely steady. But I'll show you some examples where I've actually panned, and you don't want the background to be, non-moving. And I've actually panned some images, and I'll show you some examples of that. Photoshop has a neat little feature that will allow you to align your images. And what that will do is it will keep your background as steady as possible, even if you hand hold. And again, we'll see some examples in a second. If you hand hold your camera, you can have Photoshop align the images, and this can be a big help. So here are some examples. In the following animations I'm going to show you, the camera was handheld. Some of them was handheld, some of it was on a tripod, and I'll indicate that. And I'll also indicate if it was handheld, if I had Photoshop align the images. And you'll see the differences when they are aligned and not aligned. So, whoops, let's go back. Okay, so here's the first one. This is Marianne's duck taken at Ripley Conservancy. And these are non-aligned. So this was taken handheld The camera was actually moved during the shooting because there was action and she was following the duck. And you can see the background is moving. You see it moves from side to side as the duck does. So this was handheld, not aligned. Okay. In this next one, this next image was aligned. This is handheld. And you see by aligning it, look at the background. You can see the people moving in the background, but even though I didn't hold the camera exactly steady, which I didn't, because before I aligned it, it was very jerky looking. You can see that in this case, the alignment did a really nice job. So when you align the images, you're going to lose part of your image. So you have to make sure you shoot with enough around your image, because if I move to the left, I may lose some of the image on the right. If I move to the right, I may lose some of the image to the left. And not all the images will have everything once they're aligned. There'll be some white areas, blank areas. So alignment means you're going to lose something. In this next image, I actually did panning, and I did not want to align it because obviously I panned this girl riding a bicycle, and the background moves, which is perfectly fine. I was very happy with that. In this next image, this was also aligned. And basically a sequence of about 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count them actually. Only about 6 or 7 images, I think, maybe 8 images there. And it was aligned, and the background you can see is perfectly aligned. It doesn't move, even though I probably did move. Okay, this next image is not aligned, and this was handheld, and you can see the mountain in the background moving a little bit, the sky moving a little bit. If I had aligned it, it would be less jerky. But I didn't align it in this case because I was actually pretty steady. Wasn't too bad. Now you can also create slideshows with animated GIFs. So in this case, I teach a workshop on infrared photography, and I go through showing a scene taken with different infrared filtration. It's sort of like a slideshow. So in this case, we have the visible image, and I'm showing it with different infrared filtrations. But you can do a slideshow like this. And as you saw, you can decide how long you want each image to be displayed. And you can actually do fades, between the images as well, which I'm going to show you how to do. Okay, this next one was shot on a tripod, and I call it the stoplight peach. And it's just, there's 2 images, and one of the images was edited to remove the color of the flesh of the peach to make it white, and one wasn't edited. So basically it's just 2 images. Very, very simple animated GIF. This next one, the first part of it stays on too long, so I'll have to talk a little bit. Shows how to cook a turkey. And presto, the turkey is cooked. So again, 2 images. And one image was basically, obviously, a cooked turkey placed on top of the uncooked turkey. This is a handheld, and you can see it's jerky. The background is jerky. It was not aligned. I think if I aligned this, I would have cut off too much on the right and left, but you can kind of see get the effect of the carnival. anatomy of a takedown. And you see the first image is staying on a little longer, and the last image is staying on a little longer. Again, you get to choose how long you want each image to be on. And this was an uncontested touchdown. This last example I'm going to show you is one you can download the images from. I give you the Adobe actually provided these images, and there's 47 different images that make up this animated GIF, and it's almost video-like, almost. Not quite, but it's almost video-like. And if you want, you can download these images and try it yourself.
So is the fact that it looks almost like a video, is that controlled by how long each image is staying on the screen?
It's made up of two things: the number of images. There's 47 different images, so it's quite a range of motion. And the second is how long each one is on the screen. And one of the options for display time is no delay. And basically that's what it is. And each image has no delay. And no delay, obviously there is a delay, but it's not very long, obviously, well under 1/10 of a second. But you know, it is a result of how long each image is on the screen and how many images we have to display. If there were fewer images, it would be more time. Well, not necessarily more time. It could be more time between each image. That's another thing. It depends on how fast you shoot these. If you're shooting this at 8 frames per second, it's going to be smoother than if you're shooting it at 4 frames per second.
So this would be a way to show something video-like in a much smaller packet, if you will, than trying to send somebody a video.
Right.
Thank you.
You can show, you know, limited motion, and some cameras now actually create animated GIFs in camera, but not too many. I've never tried it. So let me go through the steps that you're going to do to create an animation. This is basically everything you need to know about creating, well, not everything, but almost everything. First of all, you can't do this in Lightroom. You can edit your images in Lightroom, but to create an animated GIF, you have to do it in Photoshop. So you're going to open up all of your images in Photoshop. So in that last sequence of 47 images, basically I opened all 47 in Photoshop, and then you basically want to show your timeline. And then you're going to click Create Frame Animation. Now, I left a step out here, so I have to add that right here, right in here. When you open your images in Photoshop, you need to get them all into layers. And the step that I left out here that I just realized is that you need to go to the Edit menu. File menu, go to Scripts, and then choose Load Files into Stack. And you're going to basically load all of your open files into a stack. And what that will do is we'll put each image in a separate layer in a new image in Photoshop. I'm going to show, when I go through the example, I'll actually be doing it. I'll be showing you what that is. So in the timeline window, you're going to create frame animation. Click on Create Frame Animation. And then you're going to create a new layer for each new frame with a plus icon. So you're going to create as many frames as you have images. So when I did the 47 images, you'd create 47 different frames. There's actually an easier way to do that, and I'm going to show you that, but you don't have to go through creating all of them yourself. From the menu icon on the right, there's a menu, little hamburger menu icon. You're going to choose make frames from layers. Oh, actually, I didn't leave a step out. I'm sorry. I forgot. I had it down here. This actually, I would prefer to do it here, but you can do it down here as well. So from the menu icon, you're going to choose make frames from layers, or let's see, make frames from layers. I'm not sure where that is. Oh, no, you're not going to do that. That's not going to work. You're going to have to do this one. Yeah, I'm not sure why I have make frames from layers in there. We'll look at it when we go into Photoshop. I'll look at it. Maybe there is a way to do it. But I go to the file menu, choose scripts, load files into stack. And then you typically want to resize because you don't want your animated GIF to be really large, because then it's going to be really big. And when I say really large, when your images come out of your camera, if you have a 24 megapixel, 36 megapixel, 48 megapixel, these images are going to be massive. And you don't want, these are typically, you're not going to print this. So this is for display on a monitor. So typically 1200 pixels across is big enough for any one of these, or even less. Under each frame, you're going to select how long it should appear. Each frame should appear. You're going to select how many times you want it to loop. And you're going to preview by pressing the play icon. And then you can adjust things as you want to. And the last thing is, which is really weird, Photoshop many years ago used to have a much easier way of doing this, a much more intuitive way of doing it, I should say. And now the way you create your animated GIF is you have to go to the edit menu or the file menu and choose save for web (legacy), which is totally unintuitive. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's what the option is, and you have to choose that, and it's the only way to save an animated GIF from Photoshop. Okay, so let's go through some examples of actually creating an animated GIF. Okay, let's see. First of all, I'll show you an example of aligning images. So what I'm going to load in is, what do we have? 4, 8, 12 images here. They are loading. I think they're loading. There they are. Okay. Oh, no, this is not what I wanted. Hold on. I added one extra image in there that I didn't want. These are all JPEGs. There's a PSD in here somewhere, I think. JPEG. No. Oh, I'm sorry. I had it open in Camera Raw. I see where it is. So let's just choose. Typically, you wouldn't open it in Camera Raw. Typically, if you open the JPEGs, this is what you'd get in Photoshop. So I have 12 images, and across the top, we have each of the 12 images. And you can see each one being a little different. And look at the background on each one as I go through them. The background changes dramatically. Well, not dramatically, but it changes enough so that it would look kind of jerky if I were to run this. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to get each of these images into a stack. So we do that by going to the File menu, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. And when we do that, it's going to take a few seconds. Whoops, let me get okay, and we're going to add open files, which will basically add all the open files to the list, and I'm going to hit OK. So it is now loading each of these images into one stack in one Photoshop document. Okay, and it's done. And this is it, and we can see, let's close this here. We can see all of the can't get it. Okay. Can you see my icon? You can see my icon, right? The hand?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see all the images in a stack right now. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say close others because I don't need the original files anymore. That's going to make me say no on every one of them. Okay. So now we only have one file open and it has all 12 of our images in it. So we're going to go to the window. We're going to go to timeline. And our timeline shows up at the bottom. And right now it's set to create video timeline. We don't want video timeline. We want a frame animation. So I'm going to click this down arrow and I'm going to choose frame animation. And to start things off, you basically have to click create frame animation. This little button here doesn't look like a button, but it is. And we're going to click that right there. And it creates our first frame. And you see the first frame is set to 0 seconds. Now, if I want to, I can hit the plus sign. And right now, by the way, what we're going to see in this frame is whatever we see in the stack. And right now, since this is the topmost image and it's visible, and they're all visible, we're only going to see this topmost image. Okay, I can literally shut off every one of these images and won't make a difference because they're all lower below the top frame, and the top frame is completely opaque. The opacity is 100%. If I change the opacity to something less than 100%, we start to see. So yeah, you can see, and you're kind of seeing two images in there, the top image and the one right below it. But we want to keep this at 100%. Doesn't want to go to 100. There it is. Okay. So we could create another frame now by hitting the plus sign. And again, we're seeing all the top frame only. But if we turn the top frame off on this one, we can see each frame is different. If we create another frame and we turn off this frame, then we now are seeing this third frame down. So again, we see each frame. Okay, this is the hard way. We could continue this way and we could do all 12 images, or if we had 47, we could do it 47 times, or if we had 110, we could do it 110 times. But as I said, this is the hard way. So I'm going to show you the easy way. So I'm going to select both 2 and 3. I hold the shift key down and I click on 2, hold the shift key down, click on 3. So they're both selected, and I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so we're going to start off this way. Right here, can you see where my cursor is pointing? There's a little hamburger menu. And on the hamburger menu, we have make frames from layers. This is almost too easy. I'm going to click on it, and there you are. It's as if I had pressed plus, created a new image, decided which image I wanted to show, so forth, so on. So you see on this first image, only the bottom image is visible. You can see it right here. And the next one, only the second from the bottom is visible. Third, fourth, fifth. So you see what create frames from layers did is create one frame for each image. Now, this typically does it in the wrong order. Although in this case, I'm not sure you'd notice the wrong order because, or maybe you would, because this is the last image. He's through jumping. But in this case, it's the first image. And it always does. It always puts it in reverse order. So you can come to your hamburger menu again, and you can choose reverse frames. And you do that. Now the first one is the topmost image, and the last one is the bottommost image, which is the end. So Now let's go in and I'm going to say the first image, let's set this to a delay of 1 second. And I'm going to click the second image and I'm going to click all the way through number 11, hold shift key down, click 11. I've selected 2 through 11 now, and I'm going to change the time to 1/10 of a second. And the last one I'll put in for 2 seconds, just to give us some variety. So at this point, I can click the play and we can actually see it play. 2 seconds on the last one, 1/2 a second on the first one, and 1/10 of a second on each additional. And of course, we can stop it. So we've created our frame animation. At this point, we can now go to the File menu and choose Export Save for Web Legacy, the totally unintuitive option. And if you didn't know what to choose, you would probably never find this. And at that point, we get this dialog. Now, when you're creating a GIF, you have up to 256 colors. We could choose fewer colors. If you were doing a cartoonish kind of thing that only had 3 or 4 colors in it, you may want to choose 4 colors, in which case the image would be much smaller. But in case of a photograph, we probably want to stick to the max, which is 256. I would not change anything else in here. Everything else you can leave alone. And the last one is looping options. And again, you get to choose once, forever, or some other number that you choose. You can actually change it in here. And we'll leave it at forever. And at that point, we can choose save. And you notice that it's going to save it as an animated GIF. Let's see, we're leaving it here, so I'll call it unaligned. This is an unaligned image. Okay, so we saved it. Now, let's align it, and let's see what that does. So meanwhile, I'm going to delete all these guys. And we're going to start from fresh. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, click on the first image in my layers, click on the last one so they're all selected. And I'm going to go to my edit menu and I'm going to choose auto align layers. And when I do that, I get these options, and basically you just want to choose auto. It's going to take a second. I've got a little display bar here. Okay. So remember when I said you're going to lose something if you align your layers? This is why. Because the camera moved during shooting, we don't have all of our image for every image. Let's go start in the bottom. You can kind of see the way the layers move around. So we don't have everything. Okay, so the question is, what do we want to lose? And it's kind of hard to tell. So sometimes you have to actually just kind of play around with it. Let's turn off. Let's see, clear ratio. There we go. Okay. So maybe we do this. We'll see how high we can go. We may not have everything the way we want it. I'll crop it like this. Okay. So now we can kind of go through and make sure we don't have anything with, anything lost. Now, one of the things that you should notice as I do this is the background is perfect. Perfectly aligned. Oh, okay. This last image, we lost something on the top. So we're just going to crop again. Crop it down to here. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to go through our process. We're going to go to make frames from layers. And there's all our layers. I'm going to reverse them again. Okay. So I will make all of these 1/10 of a second. And the last one I'll make 2 seconds. So let's see how that looks. And you see how nice the background is now. The background is really well aligned. And I'll save this. Whoop. Habit. I did file save. I need to do file, export, save for legacy. I've only been doing this for 10 years and I still can't remember to do save for legacy. Okay, and we're going to save it here. And this one we're going to call aligned. And I'll show you the two of them next to each other. Okay. Let me find each of those. Okay, here's the folder. So this is the unaligned. And you can see how the background jumps around. It's a little unnerving. In some cases, you want that, though. As I showed you in the panned image, we wanted it to do that. And here's the aligned image, which looks a lot better. Okay. Any questions? No?
Bert, how large is that file? Say you just did the 12 images. I know they were only 1,200.
Okay, the
Pixels.
aligned, well, yeah, I don't know how big they are. Let's see. Image size. These are, okay, so they're 983. Well, this is the aligned one where I cropped. So it's 983 pixels across. And the aligned one is 4.6 megabytes. The unaligned one is 6.3 megabytes because I think that is 1,200 pixels across.
Gotcha.
Or 1199, yeah, that is 1,200 by 800. Now, that's a large size. Most animated GIFs aren't much more than 800 pixels across. So if we made it, even smaller, we could get a much smaller image out of it. So image, let's do image size. Let's change this to 700. Let's see what that does. We'll call it untitled. And untitled is 2.5 megabytes. So a lot smaller. And that is a dozen images. And each of these images is about 300K. So you're basically getting the sum of all of them.
The other thing I've run into I've never made my own GIF, but now I'm going to try, but using GIFs from other people to put them into PowerPoints, they work the first time I do it. And then when I give the PowerPoint, a lot of times they don't work anymore.
Yeah, I've noticed like that first issue I had with the, that wasn't an animated GIF, that was actually a video. But videos I have a lot of problems with Zoom. And I know there's an option in Zoom when you share your screen for video, and it's at the bottom, and you need to check it off. And I did, but that video still isn't showing. But I've had some videos show fine, and other ones don't. I don't know why. But it's, as I said, that was working when I wasn't showing it in with Zoom. So I'm not sure why that is. Okay. So let's close that out. And let me show you another. Well, I'm trying to get there. Here we are. Okay, so this is an image. There's actually two images. If you look at the timeline, I've already created this. This is a timeline of two images. And the two images are these two. Okay, so we could create an animated GIF and it would look like this. Now that's a half a second for each image. Okay. And it is jerky. However, there is a way to create frames between frames, or as Adobe likes to call it, tween frames, Tween. And the way you do it is you select the first frame and you click this tween icon. And when you click the tween icon, it says tween with next frame, which is, I only have two here, so I'm keeping it nice and simple. So we have the next frame, and it says number of frames to add. And I think it defaults at 5, and you can put 20 in there if you want. We'll leave it at 5. And typically you don't need to change anything else. And we're just going to choose OK. Now, you'll notice that we started with 2, we now have 7. And if we look at the second one, we can start to see parts of the last frame. So what Adobe does is they create composites where the frames are migrating from one image to another. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this time to no delay. And let's run it. It's kind of cool. It's kind of like an animation that's not as jerky. We now have something in between. Almost looks like it's a full motion video, but not quite. It has a neat look to it. So you can use the tween option to create these frames. You know, if we were to create, I'll delete these, and I will create another tween, but this time I'll do 25. And we'll set all 25 to no delay. I have no idea what this is going to look like, by the way, but we'll give it a shot. Yeah, so you can see it's a much slower animation. Actually, I don't like it as well. I thought the 5 worked a lot better. But you get to choose. In some cases, more will be better, and in some cases, less will be better. So that's about it. I'll show you one more. And this one is the one you can download from Adobe. Adobe actually makes these available to you. Let me make sure I get the right ones here. And we'll go through the whole process one more time. Okay, so here we're going to have 47 different images. Well, I have them open in Adobe Camera Raw. But here we go. Now they're in Photoshop. So this is the animation you saw earlier. Why is, oh, okay. It almost looked like it was animated. It was still loading the images. Okay, so we're going to go into File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. Now it's going to load all the files into a layer stack in a new document. I'm going to say add all open files. And if we wanted to, we could remove some of the files if we didn't want them all, but we'll leave them all. And we hit OK. It's going to take it a few seconds to load all 47 images into a stack. And it's going to load it into something called Untitled. And it's going to go through a few machinations while it does it. Loading, loading, loading. There we go. Okay. So this is our stack. We can see all 47 images are here. And I'm going to basically close all of them but this. And it's going to ask me if I want to change each one, even though I didn't change it. There we go. Okay, so now we have all 47 images in our layers. And I'm going to click on choose create frame animation. I'm going to click on make frames from layers. And that's pretty quick. And then I don't have to reverse this one because frankly, you're not going to tell which ones should be first and which one should be last. And it's going to be continuous. And I'm going to leave, since we have so many frames, I'm going to leave them all at no delay. So they're all at no delay, 0 seconds. And again, there is a delay, but it's pretty small. So if I run this, you get to see the water. Now, if I want the water to move slower, I can change the delay. So let's do that because I think the water's moving a little fast. So we can change it to 1/10 of a second. Whoop. I need to choose all of these. Change them all to 1/10 of a second. So let's run it now. There's that. And you can slow it down even more if you wanted. And one of the things you can also do is select them all again. You can choose any one of them. It doesn't matter if they're all selected. You can do other, and you can literally type in any number you want. So if you wanted 1/4 of a second, you can type in, oops, that's 25 seconds. Let's do 1/4. 1/4 of a second, 0.25, even though it's not in the list, that's no problem. Now they're all 1/4 of a second. Now you could create tweens between them all to make it even smoother, but that would be a lot of work. There's no easy way to do that, as far as I know. You have to just basically do each one at a time. And that would create an awful lot. In this image right here, if we look at this, this is image. Okay, it's 1,000 pixels across, 1,000 by 675. And I can tell you that the animated GIF for this is, come on, 13 meg.
Oh.
And that's 47 images. So it's not too bad. So again, you can download these images from Adobe. But if you want to create them, animated GIFs yourself, and you have something with animation, something moving, because you have to have something moving to do this, give it a shot. Put your camera in continuous mode. Shoot some images. Try shooting it different ways. Carnivals are great for doing it. You can go to a carnival and you can have all the amusement rides. You get kids running around, all kinds of stuff, and you can just experiment and find which ones you like best, and then create your animations.
Hey, Bert, if you want to set it for a resolution to show it online, Facebook or whatever, do you set it at 72, the usual 72 PPI, or do you set it in image and size, set the size there? And at what point do you set it? Of course, at setting sizes, I'm not really well versed on that, obviously.
Well, all you'd need to do is in Photoshop, you'd go to the edit menu, or image rather, menu, and choose image size. And then set it to pixels and choose the number of pixels. Typically, you know, for online, you know, depends on what monitor people have and what service you're using. Some services have a maximum limit for size. Other ones don't, but it depends. You know, in this case, it's set to 1,000 pixels. 1,000 pixels is probably a good number. 800 pixels might even be better if you don't need it big. You know, a lot of the times you don't need these really big.
Yeah, I'd want to keep it low, but not too low, so I don't lose the resolution online, but low enough to where I don't have any more than what I really need. What would I set it at for that?
Well, it depends. Depends on
Just
the image too.
generally.
You know, it depends how much detail is in the image. 800 pixels might be fine for most.
Okay. And at what point, again, I'm not versed on this at all. At what point in the process do I set this?
Right here in Photoshop.
Oh,
Before you
yes, I know
save
that.
it. Before you
Okay, when you
save it.
have them all up and you call that up,
Right.
image size. Okay, got it.
Image size. You set the image size to what
Yeah.
you want. So if we wanted to change this to 800 pixels,
And it does it
you see
to
it gets a
all
little
of them.
smaller. You know, then we'll export this. And
Does it do it to all of them, or do you have to highlight all of them and then go through image and then size?
no,
it?
it does them all at once. You don't have to
Okay.
highlight each one. You just do it once for the whole stack.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll just save this as X GIF so I won't overwrite my other one. And so basically when we went from 1,000 pixels, that image was, what did I say? It was 13 megabytes. It is now, went down to 800. It is now 12 megabytes. So we didn't go down that much. But again, this is 47 images. It's more than you typically would use. I've never done an animated GIF with that many images.
Yeah.
So
This is great, Bert. That's all new territory for me, and I suspect a lot of others learned some stuff for the first time. Now, this recording, I guess it takes a day or so for it to process in the Zoom cloud, and then I think.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Oh, okay.